Welcome to Republican Women Fighting to Take Back America, the podcast where Republican women lead from the front, tell the truth about what's happening in Washington, and organize to win. I'm your host for today, Vicki Burkett, chair of the Programs Committee, and this episode is a special one. NFRW President Martha Jenkins was in the room last night for the State of the Union address, and she's joining us to share what you didn't get from the TV cameras and talking heads. We'll talk about how she was able to attend, what it felt like inside the chamber, and what stood out most in the night's message. We'll dig into the biggest highlights of the speech, the new announcements President Trump made, and the behind-the-scenes moments, what she saw, heard, and noticed that never makes it onto the broadcast. Stay with us, because if you want the real perspective from a leader who was actually there, you're in the right place.
She's fighting to take back America. It's time to take a stand. She's fighting to take back America and let your voice be heard. She's fighting to take back America, to make her proud again. Oh, the movement has already begun.
So hello, Martha. It's so exciting that you were there at the State of the Union. Can you tell us how that came about?
Well, I have a very good friend who's a congresswoman from Virginia, congresswoman from North Carolina, Virginia Fox, and she was able to procure an extra ticket from the speaker's office so that I could attend. And believe me, it was great to have Virginia as my companion and mentor as we got through the crowd in the speaker's office, and we got to meet a lot of really nice people. But Virginia was great, and I want to publicly thank her and the speaker's office for getting me a ticket to be able to go.
Oh, it's so amazing. I'd like to thank her as well. So tell us, what was it like being there?
Well, it was surreal in a lot of ways. I have been in the chamber of the House of Representatives before, on tours, as well as once I was also Virginia Fox's guest in the gallery to watch part of the session one day, but that was several years ago. So it wasn't totally unfamiliar, but it was certainly truly awesome to be watching history being made, to watch all of the House members come in and the Senate members come in, and then to see the Supreme Court and the cabinet members, the Vice President, Speaker of the House, and of course, President Trump. Melania was seated right directly across from me, but of course, you know, the room is so big. It was hard to make out her facial features or the other people in her box from there. Knowing I could pick out that the president's family was beside her. So it was extremely exciting and just awe-inspiring, and I was just trying to take everything in because I may not ever get another chance to do this.
It's a great opportunity. I'm so glad you got to do it. I thought it was President Trump's best speech ever. He knocked it out of the park. And what do you think were the highlights?
Well, there were a number of highlights. First of all, it was good to see him really concentrate on his domestic agenda, because the media would have you think that he's been paying too much attention to foreign affairs and not as much to domestic issues, but that really isn't true. He highlighted all of his accomplishments domestically, as well as made some key new announcements. Of course, he highlighted that the border is closed and that prices are coming down, inflation is nearly stopped. Growth would have been historic last year if it hadn't been for the long government shutdown in the fourth quarter. And he, of course, placed the blame for that where it should have been, on the Democrats. Several of his announcements were really eye-opening. I love the 401k for everybody, where those who don't have 401ks in the jobs that they have could match, and the government would match up to $1,000 a year to go into to a 401k account. It's kind of a parallel to the Trump accounts for children, and I think it's a great idea. When people have a stake in their country through their pocketbooks, they're much more likely to be thinking about long-term versus short-term when it comes to economic issues. Another thing that was really interesting to me was the announcement that the tariff income or the tariff revenue potential is so great that it one day may mean that we don't even need the income tax. Gosh, wouldn't that be just marvelous for all of us? We work too many hours of every day to just pay the taxes. And so that would be fantastic. Love the idea of outlawing commercial driver's licenses for illegal aliens all across the country. Of course, he stressed that the SAVE Act needs to be passed. That's something NFRW has been really pushing. We really hope the Senate will pass that. We're paying attention, want to see that pass. And of course, just such a stark contrast when some of the things that he would announce, the Republicans would stand up and most of the gallery would stand up and cheer, and Democrats would sit on their hands. I will say that there were a few Democrats that would stand up on some of them, but the bulk of them, for his actual accomplishments and conservative agenda, they just would not stand up. They wouldn't even acknowledge hardly that they were hearing it, except for the two biggest troublemakers, Omar and Rashida Tlaib, yelling at him constantly. It reminded me several years ago of when Obama was making a State of the Union speech and Joe Wilson was castigated for yelling out "liar." You certainly didn't hear any criticism from that side for their own people who were heckling, to put it mildly, the president through a good part of his speech.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember when I remember that liar line, and it was shocking back then, but now, yeah, we've lost a little control for sure. So what were some of the other surprises? What you experienced that we might not have seen on the television coverage or from the talking heads?
Well, I will say that it was surprising to me how much unity there was on some of the applause lines, especially recognizing our military heroes. For instance, the Coast Guardsmen who saved so many lives at the Christian camp in Texas last year, for the soldier that was injured during the Maduro raid. That was probably the longest standing ovation of all. Probably even longer, although I didn't measure the time, but it seemed longer even than for the hockey team. And of course, everyone stood for the hockey team. They seemed to be ecstatic to be there. They seemed to be such fine young men, all smiles, loving America. In fact, to me, that was the theme of the whole speech, about how great our country is, how much we love our country, and how much we want to preserve our country for the generations to follow.
Well, Martha, thank you so much for all this insight. I'm so proud that the NFRW was represented there and for the State of the Union. So thank you so much for going, and thank you so much for sharing that experience.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki, for leading our podcast today. I know our listeners enjoyed hearing about behind the scenes with President Trump and the State of the Union address. If you're watching this podcast and you are not a member of NFRW, please go to nfrw.org or email membership@nfrw.org. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Republican Women Fighting to Take Back America podcast on YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, True Social, and TikTok.
She's fighting